I don't ever want you guys to think that underfueling is only for people who are thin. You don't have to look a certain way to be underfueling. My diagnosis technically was hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is basically underfueling over exercising, but a much more scientific way to say it. And this is sometimes I think why we get turned away at the doctor is like, I wasn't under my BMI. I was within a normal BMI. And so that was like almost right away the doctor thought, well, I can't have hypothalamic amenorrhea, right? But you can at any size and you can be under fueling.
Hello, and welcome to Find Your Fuel, the podcast where we bring you stories from women who have overcome different physical, mental, and emotional struggles and found the fuel to live their best life. I'm your host, Erin Martin. And in this episode, we dive into poor nutrition and stress, which led our guest, Cortney Berling's body, to eventually sound the alarm, leading to fertility issues. She shares her personal story and the realization that she knew in her heart what the problem was, even when others had different advice from a slew of medical professionals. We'll discuss the recovery process and what she realized she was doing wrong and what she'd tell her younger self now about fueling for purpose versus aesthetic.
So it all really got started when we moved to San Diego. My husband and I were born and raised in Ohio, and I was finishing up my internship at the Cleveland Clinic when he had joined the Marine Corps and he had finished all of his basic training at the same time that I was at the Cleveland Clinic. So it was like perfect. We were just dating, we got to ship off to California together because he got orders out to Camp Pendleton in California. And it was awesome. Like we were living this really great life. I made all these really awesome friends through running, and the girls I was running with are amazing. I mean, most of them were qualifying for the Olympic trials. It was just like such an amazing group of women. And so I was running with them and everything was great. And I was working for the first time as a registered dietitian. And then shortly after we got married, my husband deployed to Iraq and he was gone for 10 months. And so my MO while he was gone was just like, I'm just going to pour myself into work and running. We didn't have kids. We didn't even have a dog at the time. And so all I did was go to work and run. And I don't know if you've ever lived by yourself, but when you live by yourself, it's a lot harder to make meals. And, you think like, oh, a bowl of cereal will be fine for dinner or peanut butter and jelly. And all the while I was also working again as a dietitian. And so what I found was that I was giving some advice to people who maybe had diabetes or heart disease. And I was teaching them kind of this like heart healthy diet or a diet to help manage their diabetes. And it kind of started to apply some of that to my own life, even though I didn't have diabetes or heart disease. And so I just naturally started eating, what we would consider clean or like lower carb, kind of on accident, to be honest. Like it was never an intent to underfuel myself or to diet. I was never on a weight loss journey. It just kind of morphed into this like not eating enough and training a whole lot more while he was gone. And I'll be honest, I got really good at running for a short period of time. You can imagine it didn't last long before I started getting injured. But the real issue is that once he got back, was like, oh, I think we're kind of ready to start a family. And I was missing my period. And there was no way we were going to start a family unless just we happened to get really lucky. But that was not the case. And so then I entered a whole infertility journey. But I'll pause there and see if you have
Yeah.
any questions on that so far.
Yeah. And did you always miss your period? Did you always have a missing period? Or were you on birth control, which was masking it, and then you went off and realized you didn't have it?
That's a good question. In high school and college, I was on birth control or at least on and off of it. So it wasn't enough that I was never off of it long enough to notice if I had a regular cycle or not, nor did I really care at that time, right?
Yeah.
I don't feel like when I was in college, it was like, I'm trying to think what years I was in college. 08 to 12 to 2012. And I don't feel like this message was talked about a lot. It was kind of like, oh yeah, that's normal. A lot of runners miss their period and it's no big deal. And so I didn't ever really voice concern about that until after college when I did get off birth control and was like, oh, this is odd that I don't get this anymore, but I brought it up to a doctor, and that doctor said, "No big deal. Just call me when you wanna get pregnant. It's normal. It's nothing to worry about,"
Oh,
which
man, and growing
I
up
know.
as an athlete, I was told the same thing. Like, I was always active, always athletic, had a weird period and thought that that was normal then, and because of it, which that is so not true. Turns out I had some underlying PCOS. I mean, a whole big thing of nutrition that I'm sure we'll talk about, but there's so many things that would cause it. It's not normal to be irregular or not have one. You can still be healthy. I think there's other things that could be going on, but it's a sign that something is going on.
Yes, absolutely, and it takes a lot of courage, I think, to tell your doctor, every time they would say, "When was your last period?" For a while, I would just make up a date and be like, "Oh, it was, like, last month," or, it
Definitely
was like
been there.
yeah, like, I was too nervous to say something, and then once I got the courage to say something, to have it be so dismissed was like, "Oh," like, and I didn't really know at that point, like, how bad that was, and, I just want everybody to know if you are missing or it's irregular, it is common, but that doesn't make it normal. Just
Mm.
because other people you might know are struggling with that doesn't mean that it's okay.
And I don't know about you, but there was also a piece of me where pre-kids and then especially after kids, I mean, I've changed my ways a little bit after kids because I know it's an important piece of health. So I know that. But at the same time, before I would be okay with not having one because it's kind of awesome. Like, who wants cramps? Who wants PMS? Nobody. So if you don't have it, you're almost celebrating the fact that you don't have it.
Right, and I feel like when I was younger, the message was like, "Oh, that means you're in great shape," and
Mm.
that mixed with exactly what you just said, which is like, "Oh, this is just an inconvenience that now I don't have to deal with, so I'm in great shape, so I'm not getting it, and I don't have to deal with all the side effects, like, sign me up." But it's all part of the way your body is supposed to be working, and it's a sign that you're fueling your body right when you get your period.
Yes. So what did you do then when you realized that you want to have a family, don't have a period or have irregular periods? Where'd you go from there?
Good question. So we tried for a while on our own. I just tried some things to get it back. Like I didn't know at the time that this had anything. Maybe in my heart, I knew that it had to do with underfueling and overtraining. I was kind of dealing with some injuries on and off. The whole gamut of like should have been a red flag to me. But when you're in it, you don't want to see that.
Yeah.
And so I had tried some different things. My husband was really gentle about it. Like, well, maybe if you eat a little bit more, or like let's have some ice cream or, but it was like I needed more than a bowl of ice cream. I needed to
Yes.
really change my ways. And I'm your typical type A runner where stress is pretty normal for me and the body can sense that stress too. And so it was a mixture of like knowing that it had something to do with my lifestyle, but not knowing exactly what. So then I saw a doctor and, they're like, oh, well, it could take a year and, that's normal and I kind of again got dismissed. And then eventually we pushed our way into an infertility clinic. And at that time, I was still dismissed. So this is now like the third doctor that's kind of been dismissing me all the way down the path. And this one I had mentioned to you when we had talked earlier. She sat down with a card and it was an index card and it had 4 squares on it. And to this day, I can't tell you what all 4 of them were, but they were all different reasons you might have infertility. And not one of them said like underfueling or overtraining or, female triad. None of them said that. And so it was like, well, you don't have this and you don't have this. So you just must have PCOS. And so she put me into this PCOS category, right? Polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's a pretty broad umbrella. And so she just had no idea. She didn't ask me any questions about my lifestyle and just was like, well, you must have this. And I remember that day so clearly. You're so nervous going in here and all you can think is like, we're gonna need IVF or we're not gonna have kids, so your mind's going a mile a minute. And she was an hour late for the appointment, which I still remember. This has nothing to do with underfueling, but I just remember the anxiety that had caused. And then for her to be like, you have PCOS. And so she had actually recommended that I eat less carbohydrates and
Oh,
maybe consider trying metformin, which is
oh
a
boy.
diabetes medication. And luckily, I knew enough at that point that had tugged enough on my heartstrings. I was like, that's not right. And I
Yeah.
knew it leaving that office that day that, like, this is more about my lifestyle, and I know she's not right. And anyways, they had sent me for a bunch of blood work, and, like, it was like, I just remember leaving that office feeling so overwhelmed. I mean, obviously, I was in tears of, like, do I have diabetes now? Or, like, I was, like, so confused.
And that's so courageous and awesome of you to realize that feeling within yourself and say, pause, this is not right. Because I've also experienced infertility, pretty similar journey in that I was also under fueling and went to some fertility clinics. First one got the same similar type of thing that
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, well, do you count calories?" And that was the one question they asked. And I was like, "No, I don't count calories." And that was the one thing that they asked. They didn't check, body comp or actually ask how many calories. I mean, they just didn't dig in at all. They were just like, "Nope, if you're here, you are going to go to this station and we're going to try this and then we're going to go to IVF and then that's the process and then you're out and hopefully you have a baby." It was like, "Whoa." But when you enter that situation, you're putting so much hope into this process that you almost just want to believe like, "Oh, okay, I do have PCOS or I do have whatever." You just want to solve it and you can just end up blindly trusting this first opinion that you hear. And if you're strong like you hit pause and are like, "This doesn't seem right. Like,
Yeah.
this can't be, the whole story. Let's go investigate more." So,
Yeah.
where did you go from there?
Well, I mean, think everything you said is so spot on. And what's crazy to me is if you and I, who don't even really know each other, have such parallel stories, how many other people have a similar story or could eventually have a similar story? So I love that we get time to share this message. And I'll say, too, being your own advocate in whatever healthcare situation or really
Yes.
anything in life is so important. Like, I always tell my clients, whether they're the runners that I coach or the nutrition clients that I have, like, you know your body better than I do. You have lived in your body for however long you've been on earth. I just met you, a week or a month or 3 months ago. So if anything ever feels off, like, be your own advocate. I think that's so important. So, okay, so where did I go from here? So I did in some way go through with this clinic. I did go get all my lab work done, and then that's where we started to see, and I can't remember specifically what numbers were off. This was 7 years ago now for the reference, because my oldest is turning 6 this week. So that actually makes this podcast feel very full circle.
And you're a
Um,
mama of 3, so 3
yes,
times over.
spoiler alert, there's 3 babies now, and they all came a lot easier than the first one. But, so I did go through with the testing, and I don't remember exactly what numbers were off, but, so, a lot of my hormone numbers were off, and, um so then they got me on a protocol, and I wish I could, like, I probably have all of this detailed in a journal buried away somewhere. But what I knew, again, in my heart to be true was, like, basically this, right? Was I knew I wasn't eating enough. Even though, again, I was not trying for weight loss, I wasn't trying to diet, I wasn't trying to do anything harmful. It was just not enough, right? And I blame that on diet culture, right? We live in this world where we're told to, like, shrink our bodies and be smaller and eat less and move more. And so I was just doing what society told me to do and
Type
what the
A
tabloid
rocked
magazine.
it. You nailed
Yeah,
it.
exactly. And and that's, like, so type A runner of, like, oh, like, I should eat less and move more. You got it. Like, don't have
Yeah.
to ask twice. And so I bought the book, and I wish I remembered the author's name. I'm looking at my bookshelf, but I don't see it. No Period, Now What? Have you read that book?
Ooh, no.
Okay. Well, if you have show notes, you can put that in there with the correct author to
Yes.
give her credit. But she wrote a book called No Period, Now What? And I will be so honest, I covered up the title. I made a little, like, middle school book jacket for it with a bag because I didn't want anybody to know what I was reading. And, I was traveling on airplanes and that. And, like, how do you sit there, like, crack open No Period, Now What? In hindsight, like, now I would do that because I'm like, ask me about it. I dare you. I would love to give you my TED talk. But that book helped so much, and one of the phrases she uses is going all in, which what she means by that is, like, stopping exercise and really fueling your body right in order to
Mm.
get your period back, and I went all in, because of her book, and so I've, like, never actually thought to reach out to her and tell her, like, how great this was, but that really gave me the green light of, like, this is really what you need to do. And so I went all in. I was injured already, so stopping running was not a big deal, but stopping additional exercise. Like I think I walked and that was it. And I did go through with some fertility treatment. Um if I can remember right, I was taking I can't think
Like
of
Clomid?
um, it was the letrozole. It's the sister
Mm,
medication to Clomid, but Clomid's what most people would take. I don't know why I was on letrozole, but they gave me letrozole and like on a baby dose, nothing happened. Then, the disappointment strikes every month and then you try it again next month, you up the dose, but they don't want to do too much because you don't want to like end up with triplets. And so
yeah.
although at that point I would have taken that too. So, eventually we got to the point where my treatment that eventually worked was letrozole with a trigger shot to help me actually ovulate and then timed intercourse. And then there was, I think I had to take like progesterone as well.
Yep.
And that was the treatment plan. But it becomes very unfun of, like,
Oh,
every
yeah.
month oh my gosh, I just, like, can remember the heartbreak of, like and then when you did get your period, it was like a double whammy of, like, I don't want this, and now I'm miserable, and I still don't have a baby, and so but I think it took probably about 3 or 4 rounds of since that started that and then I was pregnant, and I have a very lucky story where I didn't miscarry, like, I just can imagine the heartbreak that goes with that, especially when you're trying so long and then you finally conceive and then, the chance of a miscarriage is always there. So I feel very, very blessed that in hindsight, my journey was pretty easy, in terms of what most people end up struggling with.
Yeah. Yeah, and I went through 2 miscarriages in that process, and for both, I have 2 kids now too, both, 10 and 6 and very healthy, so worth the struggles, but it took 2 years for each kid and 2 miscarriages, and each time I also went through the process of visiting some fertility clinics, seeing if I think Clomid was one, Clomid, and then there's an F one that I'm blanking on too, um, that I had tried. But miraculously, I don't know how this happened, but my oldest daughter, we did get pregnant without me having a period. Like, just some miraculous, and you can ovulate without having a period. And I believe you can have your period without ovulating. Like, those both things can happen, which is wild. That's crazy to me. But in both cases of both my kids, I had also needed to get my body to a state of feeling safe and
Mhm.
ready to have a kid, which meant bringing my period back, also relaxing on some exercise and stress and fueling myself properly. And I think the big thing too that I would want women to know is that this doesn't just apply to super active and athletic people. Like, I can have a Saturday of kids activities and be way more tired or stressed out than running 13 miles with thousands of feet of vert on a Saturday. Like, being a
Yes.
mom or just being like a lady who's busy, or if you already have one kid, like, there's just so many things that life can pile on us stress wise that's not just running and under fueling that can put your body in this unsafe state where it's saying, no, you're not having kids. Like, you
Yeah.
are not a safe place to bring children into this world. You're in survival mode. And that's what's happening right now. That's why your period has shut off. No procreation if you're in survival mode, all the things. So it's kind of wild to think about everything that could happen to women today. It's not just underfueling and overtraining that could be impacting fertility.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there for sure. A couple other thoughts on that is I love the saying, which I tell my athletes all the time, is your body doesn't know mileage, it knows stress. So
Mm,
running is a form of stress on the body, but you're right. Like on Saturdays, that's my day to go do my long run, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, like how did you go do this long run?" And I'm like, "Oh, actually, running 20 miles with my friends is way easier than taking 3 kids to gymnastics by 8 a.m. on a Saturday, followed by soccer, and, I'm like, "Oh, my husband has a hard job today," And so the body doesn't know mileage, it knows stress, and it is actually, like, I feel like in some way, the body not getting a period because it's not in a safe place, like, if that's the reason why you're not getting a period, It's almost like a way to like thank your body that it's a way to protect you. That like if you were lost out on a trail or like you were in a place where you shouldn't be having, bearing another life, your body knows that. And I always like in a way, I think that's so miraculous that the body can sense that the stress levels too high, you have too much on your plate. This would be too much for you.
Yeah, believe it or not, it's our bodies working for us. It's not working against us, and it can do miraculous things. Or even the metabolism adaptation of how it can change and just fuel off of, various amounts of food that you're getting. I mean, I'm learning all of this different stuff as I go, but it is pretty crazy how your body can be just so resilient and adaptive to different situations to protect yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, like what you just described, is why diets work for a short period of time, right? You start eating less food, you eat less calories coming in, and you're losing some weight and you're feeling pretty good. But then the metabolism has to adjust to match that because it doesn't want to stay in a deficit. So then the body slows the metabolism down or eventually like stops hair growth or stops, your menstrual cycle, GI system slows down. The body shuts down things that aren't considered essential.
Yeah. Yeah, and so after your first kid, what happened after that? Was everything smooth sailing? Did you need to go back to fertility
Yeah, that's a
treatment?
good question. And, I want to be, I don't know like who your audience is. And, I want to be cautious about this because infertility and that it is a really triggering topic for some. And again, not everybody has a smooth journey, but your journey is your own. And this is my journey, of course, which, so we just assumed we would need fertility treatment. And so we had moved because we're a military family. So, it would be so simple if all I had to do was go back to the same doctor. But I went to a different doctor. We were in Virginia now. We were in Massachusetts for the first child. And then now we're in Virginia, or well, now we're in Portland. But at the time we were in Virginia and went to this doctor who was lovely. And she was like, great. If this is the treatment plan you were on last time, like, let's just order that and like you should be good to go. And so I feel very ridiculous saying this. That day I went to her office and she had like ordered up, typical, let's order some labs. And I was, to this day, remember exactly where I was. I was on the highway driving in Virginia and she called me and she said, well, we can't go forward with the treatment plan. And you're like, oh my gosh, like what that, like, why? She's like, because you're already pregnant.
Oh, best news ever.
And so, right, I know your face is fantastic for those of you that can't see her. Um, and so it wasn't that far along. I'm not like a crazy story where you hear people be like 6 months and they don't know it. I was like 6 or 7 weeks pregnant and didn't know it. But just like I think Erin, you had said earlier, of like you did get pregnant once without a period. I was breastfeeding my first. I breastfed her for a little over a year, and then I did want to stop breastfeeding so that I could like get my. It's normal to not have your cycle during breastfeeding from a hormonal standpoint and everything else going on. So I wanted to stop breastfeeding to like work on getting my period back, and it must have been like the first ovulation. So there you go. And then my third, I only have 3 kids. So my third and final, was also really smooth sailing. I feel like my body just like knew what to do. It was like clockwork. Like I nursed my son for maybe 13, 14 months, stopped nursing him, got my cycle back. And then I think it was like we tried like 1 month or I like thought, like we were like on track and then didn't happen. And then it was like the next month or so. It was like pretty easy. And again, I recognize not everybody's gonna have it that easy. And in the moment with my first, it felt like we're never gonna have kids. And my internal like clock is ticking here. And I wanted 3 kids and we're running out of time. And but when you start fueling your body right and lowering your stress level, well, mine's actually still pretty high, but when you're cautious of that, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and we'll definitely I think we have some guests coming on with IVF journeys and other infertility journeys where the outcome may be different than you and I had, but I think at the core one big takeaway for me is it's just wild how many doctors you can go to who just look through a simple lens and apply the same simple playbook to everybody because that's what high level works for the masses, but not you. And so that's the hard piece, I think, with all of it is knowing when to always seek a second opinion. And for me, I went from that first fertility clinic to a second that was way better. Just asked more questions, cared about how I wanted to get pregnant as opposed to just pushing their playbook on me. And then
Mm.
even after that, I got a third opinion from a more holistic doctor where I remember walking in and just thinking, this lady is woo woo. Like, this is like, she's going to give me a crystal and like just say, Godspeed, good luck with this crystal. That's what I thought I was walking into. But she was actually the only person who came at it from a let's look at your nutrition standpoint. And
Mm.
that's what helped me look at a lot of the good foods that I was taking in, eat a little bit more, and just work on that, reducing the stress level. And so turns out Crystal Lady was the one who was right. So it's just one of those things where it's so rough to try to figure out what you can trust or way to go about it. And so trusting your intuition and being your own advocate and continuing to ask all the right questions just makes so much of a difference when you're trying to uncover a root cause of something.
Yeah, that's so true. And it might seem at the time like a friend of mine that was going through infertility dealt with this where it's like, well, I've already gone so far into this, clinic or this treatment protocol. I don't want to start over and go a
Mm.
different route now. But you should absolutely go where you're comfortable. It's worth if even if it feels like you're starting from the beginning, I think it's worth doing that if you don't feel comfortable with the current, whether it's the doctor or the protocol or, whatever the system is that you're not comfortable with.
Yeah, I love that, especially when you feel like you're behind the 8 ball and all your friends have kids already and you can't.
Mm.
That's the worst feeling when you just see everyone else around you getting pregnant when you can't, and you're just thinking, "It will never happen for me."
Yep, definitely. And then that stress actually just makes it all worse. And it's so, so hard in the moment because it's one of those things where when you want to get pregnant, I do feel like it seems like everybody else around you is making these grand old announcements. And it's a really hard place to be. And, I want to make sure we honor that.
And so how do you look at fueling your body now? I think both as you're a kind of competitive runner, you do running coaching, so you help other people with their running and nutrition. And so what's the lens that you look at, not just through athletic performance, but I think women's health? How do you kind of think about nutrition?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yeah, I'm a registered dietitian and a running coach, and both from a nutrition and running, I look at everything through an intuitive eating lens, and maybe not even intuitive eating, but just like following your intuition in general, and not to sound like your holistic doctor here. There's so much more to that. But I was actually just talking to an athlete about this earlier today. It's a partnership. You should always feel like that with either your running coach or your dietitian. If you're working with somebody, like I want my athletes to get good at listening to their body. It's about eating the foods that feel good in your body, eating when you're hungry, stopping when you're full, eating foods that are satisfying to you. Because if you're following very strict food rules, that's going to leave you likely underfueled or missing something. Or if you're denying certain food groups or, having to earn your food, that's likely going to set you up for underfueling.
Yeah, those are all good tips. And I think things that I recognize in my previous self that I would do. And again, not because, I didn't have a full blown eating disorder or anything like that. But again, just that rule that we lived by of let's get more calories out than in can
Mhm.
lead to restricting naturally when you need to be thinking about it the other way. What can I give my body to perform, reduce stress, feel good, live? And, all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I do not count calories. I don't recommend calorie counting. I always try to think of it, if I had to say like one lens that I look at it through, is what can we add to the diet to make ourselves feel better versus what do we need to take away?
I like that. So what are your usual go-tos then? What's the type of meals and stuff that you eat?
Oh gosh, I'm an oatmeal person for breakfast. It's just with kids, like an overnight oats. I'll make like three at a time, and they just stack up in the fridge, and then grab them and go. But I pack it with peanut butter and flaxseed and blueberries, and sometimes pumpkin seeds, protein powder. So like it's a full bowl of oatmeal. I'm big on smoothies, right? Again, like on the go or in the car. So smoothies with lots of berries for the antioxidants, Greek yogurt, whole milk, protein powder again. Not that I'm pushing protein powder, just is an easy way to get that in. Lunch, I love sandwiches. I'm a simple gal. I just love a good sandwich or like avocado toast with eggs is one of my favorites. And a side of vegetables or a side salad. But in the past, salad used to be kind of my main course, and now it's just the like side dish to it. It's a complement to the meal. It's not the meal.
Mhm.
I love things like perfect bars and Laura bars. Like I think bars are really good if you're in a hurry, not so much the like super high protein, low sugar ones, right? I'm talking about ones that are made with real food, like the perfect bars and the Laura bars. Those are two really good ones.
Yeah, some
Um,
of those bars have super high sugar alcohol
oh yeah,
levels, which that jacks me up. I didn't
that
realize until I had one and that had a ton of it in it, and I felt so wonky. I felt like I was gonna pass out and I had the flu all at once.
oh my
And
gosh.
someone finally was like, "Oh, well, you just had this crazy protein bar with a lot of sugar alcohols in it." And I was like, "Ugh, that's disgusting."
Yep. I it cracks me up when my clients will tell me like, "Whoa, carbs make me so bloated." And then I look at they're eating all this like low sugar, high sugar alcohol, high fake sugar. And I'm like, that's the problem
Yeah.
more so than the carbs. It's all the fake stuff that's in there. So I do still really love real food, but don't get me wrong, I absolutely still eat processed food. We eat frozen pizza almost every Friday night. And it's not like, oh, that's only on Fridays. Like we have all kinds of different food, and I think that's the biggest thing is breaking those food rules. You're allowed to have things. I mean, I had a cookie today. Yeah, I've got I'm trying to think other things. I'll have a beer or two with my husband on the weekends, breaking those food rules, but eating the foods that make your body feel good is really the message.
Yeah, I like that. And I think one thing that's helped me mentally with food too is just already layering in those foods that you would typically think of as a cheat food and just saying, like, this week I'm going to have this, I'm going to have it on this day. And then it doesn't become this, you can never have this. You can have it 10% of the time, 5% of the time. Like, if you are rules oriented, sure, maybe apply a rule. But I think giving yourself that permission and actually planning it in can be super helpful because then you can look forward to it and you don't feel like, you're beating yourself up if you have a big bowl of ice cream after a big meal and then you're wishing you didn't and feel like you need to go exercise the next day. It's like, no, you don't want that to happen. You want to be able to go into it willing to take that journey with your food kind of thing.
Yeah. I like to think of it as there's no good or bad foods. Like you're not good for having a salad and you're not bad for having a bowl of ice cream. Food is just food and it all contains different types of nutrients and different energy amounts, right? Calories or energy. And so all foods can fit, but it is important to sit down and think about what makes me feel good.
Mm.
And sometimes a bowl of ice cream is going to hit the spot, right? That's why we say that, especially when we leave a restaurant, is like, wow, that really hit the spot today. And so sometimes that's what your body needs, and that's okay, that's not wrong.
Yeah, and it's funny, I kind of, pushed out salads because it was one of those things where I was trying to lift heavier, build some muscle, fuel more, so I was having a lot of bowls with black beans, farro or quinoa or some whole grains, sweet potatoes, and meat, and so I had pushed out salads, which actually made me feel better to have salads. Like I still needed more carbs and protein, but my body just craved a lot of the leafy greens and broccoli. And so I had to bring that back in because I was like, oh, that actually makes me feel really good.
Yeah.
And I just need to bulk up on some other stuff throughout the rest of the day and have my oatmeal bowl in the morning to get there. And then I'll still have salads because that's what my body needs. So it's so personalized. I think it's easy to
Mhm.
look at what other people are doing and, see that as like the way that's right or like the healthy way of doing it. But the only healthy way of doing it is the best way that's your for your body, like you were just saying.
Yeah, that's so well said. I totally agree. And if you think about like after you've been on a vacation or a road trip and you're like, oh my gosh, I just want a salad. Like I just want something fresh. There's just going to be different times in your life where certain foods are just going to feel so right for you. And that doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just what your body needs on that day.
I'm curious if you've ever gone sideways with nutrition or food at any point. Like if you've learned any hard lessons of your own eating, whether it's in training or just everyday life where you're like, oh, that didn't work very well.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, nothing that jumps out at me, but I mean, obviously going on the like, oh, I'm gonna eat clean, like we saw where that got me,
Yeah.
right? And like trying to limit the processed food actually ended up being a bad thing for me. And so when I see people go on this like, oh, I'm gonna eat clean, or oh, I'm gonna like cut out, like go low carb, I'm like, please don't do that. Like that will send you sideways, and again, to each their own and everybody's on their own journey. But eating too healthy can be a bad thing. There's no such thing as the perfect diet, really. There's got to be some mix and match there. Um, but I mean, like from a running standpoint, I can certainly give plenty of examples about like, sometimes you go on a run that you either weren't intending to go on or you went out for lunch that you weren't intending to do before that run. But like, your obvious options, like just like the Mexican meals or, I mean, like I'll spare y'all from the details, but things like that have happened where you're like, "Oh, yep, okay, I'm not invincible, and I actually do need to, like, watch what I'm eating before I go out and run." So there's been some funny situations like that, but luckily the hardest lesson I had to learn was the low carb, trying to eat too perfectly.
Yeah, and us growing up thinking that carbs were bad. That was for sure such a and still a thing. Still, there's something out there that's saying low carbs are bad, like remove the carbs. And I heard somewhere, I need to validate if this is true, but it sounds correct, is that for women, when we get in that fight or flight survival mode, and removing carbs could get us into. We lose our periods, we retain fat, our bodies are hunkering down for survival. And so low carb situations, not eating enough can trigger that, holding on to
Yep,
fat in that survival mode. Where in males, if they go into more of a survival mode, reducing carbs, that type of situation, they go into survival mode, which is get jacked, kind of go kill things survival mode. So it's like our bodies are so different on how they react to similar things. And for so long, I forget the exact date, but there's a time where most studies were just always done on men.
oh,
And
yeah.
so they don't have a ton of studies on this impact of fertile women, which means, okay, like there's so much studies out there where we're just looking at how something impacts males versus females. So we're just wildly different, and low carb does not cut it.
Yes. No, you're so right on all of that. The male and female hormonal profiles are just so different, and how we respond to things like, I mean, this could be a whole topic in itself, but like intermittent fasting, low carb,
Mm.
women's bodies just don't respond the same way as men's bodies do, especially when we're looking at intermittent fasting. And I was at a presentation not long ago, and she talked about this exactly about when we started doing more like research on female athletes specifically. And it would blow your mind. It was so recent. I mean, and I can't remember the exact date, but I know it was like within 2020, like it was within the last 5 years. But before that, it was like 90+% were done on men.
Mm.
And that's if you guys follow like Stacey Sims, right? She's got an amazing book called Roar is her first book. And the tagline is women are not small men. And what they used to do, years ago is they would just study men and then they'd say like, okay, well, same recommendations for women, but just shrink it down a little bit because they're smaller. Stacey actually refers to it as shrink it and pink it. Shrink it down and put some pink on it. And it is so true. And then now we're like learning more and realizing that men and women are actually wildly different and how much hormones play a role there.
Yeah, or even like cold plunges, that there's a different temperature that's needed for women when they cold plunge, because what you're trying to get your body into the state, there's a different temperature we need than men. So
Right.
actually men need colder than women, and I forget what that exact degree is. If I find it, I'll post it. But it's so interesting. And I do want to pick your brain on intermittent fasting. What's your hot take then on that for men versus women?
I'll never support intermittent fasting
Okay.
as a registered dietitian, men or women. But specifically for women, it's so harmful to our hormonal profile. But regardless who you are, especially for an athlete, right? That's who I work with now is runners and mostly females. But it's really setting you up for underfueling. And I feel like intermittent fasting is an eating disorder in disguise,
Mm.
right? It's just setting rules around when you're allowed to eat and making it accepted by society. And it's really just giving you not enough. It's preventing you from listening to your body. It's slowing down your metabolism. It's for women, especially, it's spiking our cortisol level, especially first thing in the morning when we need food coming in.
Interesting. I know whenever I've done it, I think I've done like a day or two on bone broth type situation. Um, the one thing that's weird with that is I always sleep epically. Like what's going on there? Is my body just in so much stress that it boots down because it thinks it needs energy then? I'm like, what's going on with that, I wonder? I don't know. That's the only benefit that I've seen from intermittent fasting on my end is I usually sleep like the dead. But
Huh.
it I
Uh,
but now that I'm saying this out loud, it sounds like it's a good thing because I'm sleeping well, but maybe it's not because my body is completely shutting down, trying to recover because I'm not getting what I need and trying to find it in other areas. I don't know.
yeah, I'm definitely no sleep expert, so I'm not sure exactly the correlation there. But my best guess here is just that it has such low energy stores that it's just like taking a break.
You're
I mean,
sleeping.
it's
Yeah.
keeping your heart beating, but I don't know. I mean, there's an argument in both directions, right? Because if you're underfueled, sometimes you actually don't sleep well, right? Like you're tired, but you can't sleep. So I'm
Mhm.
not sure, and this just goes back to the human body is amazing and intricate. I used to teach my runners that you wouldn't drive a car without putting gasoline in it. But then I'm also thinking, we're way more intricate than a car. Honestly, a car would be a simple fix. A human body is so much more complex.
Yes. Yes, we are. Well, anything else that you wish that our listeners could take away from our convo today, Courtney, before we head out?
Well, I hope they've enjoyed it, first of all. One thing that you brought up earlier, and I wanted to say and just forgot, but I don't ever want you guys to think that underfueling is only for people who are thin. You don't have to look a certain way to be underfueling, or you don't have to uh my diagnosis technically was hypothalamic amenorrhea,
Mm.
which is basically underfueling over exercising, but a much more scientific way to say that. Um, eh, you don't, and this is sometimes I think why we get turned away at the doctor is I wasn't under my BMI, I was within a normal BMI. And so that was almost right away the doctor thought, well, I can't have hypothalamic amenorrhea, right? But you can at any size and you can be underfueling, you can be overtraining, you can be missing your period from this, even if you have a BMI that would define you as obese, which the BMI chart could also be a separate podcast.
Yeah, that thing just needs to get thrown away.
Totally.
I can't believe it's still around. It blows my mind.
Yes. But that's so, so important is that you're not advocate for yourself, listen to your body, and you kind of will know in your heart what's right.
I love that. And underfueling can also mean not getting the nutrients that you need from the food you are eating. I mean, it's obvious, but if you are eating a bunch of junk, you are not giving the body it needs to perform, to live, to have energy because you're not giving it those actual whole foods and nutrients and all the things it needs.
Yep. It's all about variety. What society would call junk food is okay sometimes, and your salads and your healthy foods and your whole food purchases are great sometimes too. It's intermixing it all is what makes the body and life work.
Love that. Well, Courtney, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So my Instagram handle is at eatwell.runbetter. So you can definitely find me over there. I'm super active on Instagram. So just drop me a line and let me know if you enjoyed this or if you have any follow-up questions. I also have a website, eatwellrunbetter.com. You can look up my services there. And I think those are the two main places to find me.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Find Your Fuel. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how this story resonated with you and anything else you'd like to hear more of in the future. And if you want to support us, please write a review. It's super helpful in getting new people to discover the show and help other women find the fuel to live their best lives.